Jesh, um, Srimurti, Chandu, MJ, Anupam. Anupam's here. Preeti, Kim Jones, fantastic. Thanks everyone for coming in. And I see Manu there also. Great. Well, I did just get back. Oh, Pavani's here too. We got a double header. Thanks for being here. I did just get back, had a unique experience as it is, and as is available to everyone at every moment. Reason that we get bored, I don't know if you do, but it's possible to take things for granted, feel entitled, and then lose one's ability to, as JM mentioned, the word nectar. I hope it's not cliche by now to say nectar, but there's a way in which we're meant to be happy. And there's a sense of joy within us that can be revived. And I say revived because it's always there. It's just that it gets covered over. So there's nothing that's absolutely new. It's just a rediscovery that comes through spiritual awakening, and it's non-sectarian. It's something available to everybody at all times, because the premise, which is generic, is that we are conscious beings. There's nectar within consciousness itself. When I identify myself with lower energies, i.e., the material world, then there's a sense of dread because I lose myself, my real sense of self. So this success sadhana is really about discovery of something that's already there. And that's what we'll do today. My teacher wrote a purport in one of his books. It's an explanation of a verse that talks about how we can all become aware of our intelligence. It's a verse that comes from a book called Srimad Bhagavatam, the quintessential teachings of yoga, bhakti yoga specifically. And in that, he describes, or does the speaker, Shukadev, ancient wisdom. We promised ancient wisdom today, right, JM? So I'm including that. There's a way in which Shukadev says to his student, Parikshit, who's a king, who's on death's doorstep, which we all may be, not to be macabre here today. It's a family show, sorry, but that's just the nature of the world. It's tenuous. We're hanging by a thread, really. And he talks about self-discovery and the ways in which one can look inwardly. In fact, the whole genre of these literatures, including the book I'm quoting from right now, Srimad Bhagavatam, is called Nigama. Gama means to go, and ni means within. So it's a different perspective. We can look in the outside world and we can see trees and forests and people and cars nowadays and so forth, and become externally focused. Or nigama, we can go within. That's the secret. I hate to, a spoiler alert for the whole show today. We talked about a secret. it's 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 already out there, actually, so it's not that secret. In fact, it's something that Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita at the very beginning of the 9th chapter, second verse. He talks about how it's an open secret. And it's just that we need a little bit of coaching, as we do in anything we do in our life, to look within. After that, we get our own discoveries, and it becomes self-evident. It's not something you need a certificate for. You can discover it for yourself. So it's an inward-looking process. And just to start off, I'd like to walk us through, myself included, a guided meditation that I've been practicing while I was on the retreat and teaching at a brief class we had every morning for practicing mantra meditation. One of the ways in which one can elevate the consciousness is through mantra meditation. There's a story about a person who came to be known as Valmiki. He started off in a confused state in his life because he was abandoned by his parents. Somehow he got estranged from his birth parents, and then he was raised by a hill tribe, and he lived in penury, and he took to thieving and violence in order to support himself. And one day he met these sages in a clearing when he was looking for travelers to rob. And he charged at the sages. There were 7 of them. And he was taken aback first by their effulgence. And then they said, "Oh, you want to steal from us? Before you do, answer our question." And he said, "I've never been asked a question before by the people I'm robbing." But he was so taken aback by their presence that he thought, "Well, I'll answer their question." And he said, they said to him that the way that you're going about your life, you're creating turbulence for yourself. And what to speak of your family that you're supporting through violence. He said, "Why don't you go and ask your family if they're willing to take part of the karmic reaction for your stealing because you're bringing it back for them. And once you answer our question, then we'll happily hand over whatever we have." He was stayed by that and became a little thoughtful. And he said, "Okay, I'll go ask them." So he went back to his family and he said, "I've been stealing, robbing, committing violence to travelers, taking their things to support all of you. Are you willing to take a part of the karmic reaction for all this?" And they said, "No, thank you. That's all for you." And he was so stunned by that answer. He had never thought about it before. He just was introduced to a way of life and he went on with it. He always felt a little out of place in his life, and he felt carried away by the lifestyle that he was engaged in. And he went back to the sages a little thoughtful, and he said, "They won't take the karmic reaction. Besides that, I must be getting some reaction for my stealing and violence. So what's going to become of me?" And these sages calmed him and told him that whatever position you're in now, you can always rise to a higher level. You can get out of this state of frustration and feeling lost. And also, you can come out of this cycle of karma that you're entrapped in right now. And he said, "Well, please tell me how." And they told him about this process of meditation, nigama, going within, noticing your psychic workings, becoming aware of what's really going on. And they told him that the most direct way to do this is called a murtikam, which means that you can bring into your mind a higher energy through a process called mantra. Man means mind, and tra means to uplift. You can uplift your mind and come to a higher perspective in life, a new lifestyle. You can come out of confusion and so forth by this mantra type of meditation. And he said, "Well, what's the meditation?" So they told him an ancient mantra, and he couldn't say it. So the sages were very intelligent, and they knew, just like a good doctor knows, how to give medicine to a patient, even if the patient can't or won't take it. So they told him, because you can't chant the sacred mantra, and he really couldn't, because there's a way in which we get into a momentum. We're carried away by a momentum in our lives in such a way that, if you may have noticed at some point, that you want to do something, but you can't. Have you ever had that happen? You want to go in a certain direction. You want to do the right thing, but your mind has become dominated by your senses, which have a mind of their own. And there's a way that is like, I know it's right, but I just can't do it. I can't break away. So he was in that state, and he was so consumed with his lifestyle, and the momentum was so strong that he couldn't say the mantra they had given him. So one of the sages, they conferenced, and the head sage of the group of 7 came back to this person. At that point, his name was Kirat. And they told Kirat, "You are so absorbed in violence, he could say the name Mara. This will be your mantra, as Mara means I'm a violent killer. And he thought, yes, I can resonate with this mantra because that's really who I am. The sages tricked him because there's only two syllables in this Mara mantra, but if you say it in succession, it becomes Rama, which is the sacred mantra, one aspect of it they wanted to give him. And so they said, you chant Mara and sit down and become fully absorbed in the mantra. And they taught him the ways of absorption. They said, you have to be patient. He said, well, how do I become patient? He said, imagine that you're sitting at the ocean and all you have is a straw, a little straw, the kind that you pluck from a plant called kusha. It's a plant with these very rigid leaves, and it can be used to a little like a leaf of grass to take one drop of water out of a body of water. And he said, imagine that you're sitting at an ocean and you only have this little straw to drain the whole ocean. He said, they told him, this is how determined you should be with your mantra. And he said, one drop at a time, one mantra at a time, fix your mind and imagine that you're going to stay there until you dry the whole ocean with one straw. So this person, Kirat, he sat down at the ocean and he took his mind, he applied the principle, and he was saying the only mantra he could muster at that time, which is Mara, 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 Mara. And as he continued with one pointed attention, after some time, he started hearing Rama instead of Mara. And he felt an upliftment, not only in his mind, but also his body. He felt himself transforming. And in absorption, he had really no idea how long he was staying there and sitting and chanting his mantra. The sages had left him in that state and had gone away. And he was so absorbed in the task of chanting his mantra, so fixed in his meditation, that ants who were crawling here, there, and everywhere and doing their business, they just took him as a big rock and they started building an anthill. And that anthill grew over Kirat, but he didn't even notice. He was oblivious to the outside world because his mantra had taken him so far inward. And now he was tasting what JM said in the beginning is some nectar, some sense of, oh, I feel happy. So as he was chanting again and again, the sages came back. You can imagine how long it was that they were away since the anthill had grown over Kirat. And they came to the spot where they had left him, and they put their ear against the anthill, and they could hear within the anthill him chanting his mantra, Rama, 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 Rama. It started as Mara, Mara, I am a killer. And it had come to this divine mantra, Rama, Rama, Rama. It means the source of all spiritual pleasure. And so they called out to him. They said, Kirat, come out of the anthill. And just then Kirat heard their voice and recognized his teachers. So he burst out of the anthill. And just as he came out, the sage Narada said to him, now your name is Valmiki. And Valmiki means one who has emerged from an anthill. So he became famous. In fact, he became enlightened by that experience, so much so that he wrote this book called Ramayana, which is famous all over the world. If you go to Thailand, you'll find streets named after Rama, and the whole story of the Ramayana is enacted in Bali, Indonesia, and it all originated from this Valmiki who had the revelation of the entire story of Rama and Sita and so forth. So one of the teachings Narada wanted to impart to the world through this student he had, who is arguably in about the worst condition that you could be in, confused, lost, estranged from his birth family, had no idea who he was, had no idea how he got such bad habits, and no way to get out of them. But he gave him a method so he could rise above the quagmire he had descended into. And that process is something that the sage Narada had passed along in over many, many generations. He had another student named Vyasa who was extremely high-minded sage, a literary genius, who was compiling all the information about the yoga wisdom literature, but he wasn't feeling satisfied himself. And so Narada taught him the same principle of this mantra. And he told him that the mantra is amurtikam. It means you can realize everything about you and your higher self and your origin and come into this sense of joyfulness through the practice of mantra. Murti means difficulty, and amurti means without difficulty. He said you can do it without difficulty. So this is the birthright of every person, of every living entity, but it's especially important for humans. If anybody's a human, give me an emoji to prove it. It's like when you enter a website and they want to prove that you're not a robot. You got to send an emoji proving that you're a human. How will I be able to tell? A thumbs up. Okay. Jean, I'm wondering about you. Artushar, SG, Zila. I need a little. Okay. Thank you. Okay. Well, the question you asked, Zila, is about Amurti is same as atypical. In some way, it is grammatically because when you put an A, pronounced as A, in front of a Sanskrit word, it reverses the meaning. So murti means difficulty and amurti means without difficulty. There are many other examples. So with that preamble about the story of Valmiki, are you ready to sit in meditation today long enough for an anthill to grow over you? Are you ready to apply your mind to draining an ocean using a straw, meaning one drop at a time? I only see two emojis. Okay. Well, at least Pavani's smiling, so I'm a little hopeful. So here's what we'll do, if you'll indulge me for a moment. And that is that I'm going to put on a little bit of music, ambient sound in the key of C, which is a very agreeable place for a chord to be, or I should say it's a very agreeable note. It's right at middle C, usually accommodates everybody. So I'm turning on special features so my Zoom can accommodate the sound. And if you would like to participate in this and follow in the footsteps of Valmiki, one who emerged from an anthill, why don't you try sitting up a little straighter than you were a second ago? It helps bring you to attention. Close your eyes and let go of the outside world. Garvin, close your eyes. Ambient. We're going to go on a journey inwardly. It's the direction that the ancient wisdom literatures point us in. Discover what's inside. See yourself. Know yourself. First step is to recognize that you're an agent. You can point your attention any direction you like. This is vital. We're not hopeless. We're not hapless. We're not helpless. Because we have free will. Consciousness means free will. And we can point our attention wherever we wish. And where attention goes, energy flows. If you don't like what you're being subjected to, change the subject matter. And now the subject matter is going to be our senses. We have senses. We're not our material senses, and let's take a look. First, put your attention to your right foot. And just let it reside there and notice that you can do that because you're a conscious being. And now very gently move your attention to your left foot. Feel your legs. Just using your mind, notice that there's life pulsing through your legs. You're the one, the conscious being in this body that's illuminating the body, so your legs are illuminated. Now notice your right hand, and now notice your left hand. And now be aware of your arms. And feel how life is flowing through your arms. Because you are illuminating your entire body. You are consciousness. And now notice your knowledge-gathering senses. Be aware of your eyes, although your eyes are closed. Your eyes are a superpower. You can look out and see objects. You can see color. Now move your attention to your ears. Right now you're hearing some ambient sound in the key of C. How are you doing that? Your ears are super empowered. Notice your nose and how it can smell, and you can distinguish different scents. Bring your attention to your tongue. And then be aware now of your tactile sense. Throughout your whole body, you have feeling. You can touch, and you can recognize the shape of something just by touching it. It's a superpower. And now notice the whole bundle of senses. Your arms, your legs, your stomach, which is now digesting something without your consent. It's just going on. Your heart, which is pumping. Your eyes, your ears. These are objects that you're observing, which means you're separate from them. And now we become more subtle and notice the mind. When someone bumps into you and you feel they're careless, maybe there's an urge in your mind. It comes as annoyance or maybe even anger. But you're aloof. You can notice it's an energy washing through. It's not you. You don't have to be carried away by it. And now we'll take a step higher and notice the intellect. It's so fine, the intellect, that it can philosophize, can discriminate. It's like an instruction coming from a wise being who's giving you information for your own good. When to get out of the way, when to say yes, when to say no. All this is being supplied, and notice that you're aloof. It's coming to you from a higher power. And now in this very moment, notice that you are pure consciousness, separate from your body, separate from your mind, separate from your intellect. And become aware of super spirit, that which maintains every aspect of the universe. Here in California, the leaves are changing, the rain is coming and going. Every being is being maintained. And now in this state of awareness of your own source, and the fact that you're conscious being aloof from the body and mind and senses. We'll say the mantra that Valmiki received from Narada, which brings one into awareness that consciousness is happiness. When we're aware of our own nature and the nature of our source, then we're in happiness, joyfulness. I'll say the two syllables I'll say them in the key of C, and you can follow in your mind. Rama. Just follow me in your mind. Rama. 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 And now imagine that you're enveloped by an anthill. You've been sitting in this state of full absorption, noticing that you're not your body or your mind, and that you come from a conscious source, and you yourself are conscious. You have free will to move your attention wherever you wish. And now you hear the calling of the sages outside your anthill. Come out. Slowly open your eyes. Come back into the virtual room we're in now. And welcome back from your anthill. In the story, I've always appreciated this transformation of Valmiki, because the ancient wisdom literatures say that we're not that far away from clarity, lucidity, from joy. I'm so absorbed in the external world, following the ways of the world, the confusing cacophony of sounds coming from different types of people, different kinds of advice. No one agrees on anything. It's very confusing, isn't it? People are of one mind, and then they get exposed to something and they're of another mind. The person you thought you knew, they think in a different way. Those things you thought were going to be in your life forever, they change. Your very body itself, that you look at it in the mirror and you think, oh, I look like this. And then later you think, oh, why do I look different? All this is the outside changing world. And the ancient sages have passed down this simple method of nigama, going within, noticing who you actually are. It's not fantasy. It's not a concoction. It's reality. And reality is substantial. Whereas the external identification we make with the changing world, that's frustrating because it never stays. It's a fake environment. Fake in the sense that it's here today, gone tomorrow. We can't abide in that. It doesn't satisfy us. Well, there you are. A little preamble that lasted 31 minutes. And now I'll show a couple of slides. Zila wants to use a tea straw. That's okay. And Jean says maybe not the ants. They're friendly ants, Jean. Don't worry. Eric says, we'll watch the recording to have, has to leave, house chores. Okay, I understand that completely. So here are a few thoughts and then we'll have discussion. How does that sound? Say yes. Sounds good. We'll have discussion. Okay, you are a conscious being separate from the body. We explored that, but that's the main teaching you'll find from the Buddha, from Krishna, from any thoughtful spiritual discipline is finding out our identity beyond the body. So, what's amazing about that? Here's what's amazing about it to me is that it's very rarely discussed. You can go all the way through kindergarten. I went through kindergarten. There was my teacher was Miss Flood. I mean, we made plenty of jokes when we were kids. And she never gave us a meditation lesson in kindergarten. I never got one from Mr. Weber in third grade. He was my favorite teacher, but he never talked about you're not your body. I never got it in junior high school. It was actually pretty close for Mr. Schumacher. Mr. Schumacher was a bohemian and he had all kinds of ideas about being experimenting with your thoughts and consciousness. I came pretty close in high school. Nothing, not that I can think of. Not until I came in contact with the ancient literatures that I noticed that there was a consistent teaching that going within, noticing the difference between you and your mind. This is really the purpose, says the ancient wisdom literature, of having a human body. As ways in which anybody can figure out how to thread a needle through a thread, put a thread through a needle and sew something, or learn how to put a nail through a board, or figure out how to touch type on a computer. Humans are really smart. They could do all kinds of stuff. But the ancient wisdom literatures, for instance, Sutta Goswami, in that same book I was talking about, he was giving a seminar on this stuff in a forest. And he was saying that these are not the ultimate goal of being a human, learning how to do all these skills. Nothing wrong with them in and of themselves. Feel free, he said, figure things out because you have to live in the world. You have to negotiate, navigate the world. But he said that human apparatus, I'm referring to it almost like a robot, that it has a special facility for spiritual discovery. You don't find a lot of cats sitting in meditation. You may say it is, but they're actually snoozing. And human beings can come to this level, what's called samadhi. Sama means complete, and ti means focus, meditation on the higher self. So that's what Sutta Goswami said. Whatever you're doing, stay healthy, stay balanced in the world just so you can do this. To me, that's a relief because there's always ways you can do, try to do better in the material world. And there's never a point at which you say, okay, I'm completely satisfied. There's always something more. But there is a way that if we can touch our consciousness, be aware of our own consciousness and the difference between us and the material body, which can be done in one session, one deep session where we're undisturbed, we can actually experience our own self and the source of ourself, then we'll feel satisfied. So that's what that first slide is about. Does anybody want to make any comments at this point? Or if you want to pose a question that you think will take the conversation to another level? JM, did I miss any of the comments on the board?
Yeah, you did cover.
I did, huh?
Almost,
That's not good. I was taking away your service there. So what else? What other thoughts do you all have?
please type in the chat box or unmute yourself. Would love to hear you.
Yeah, otherwise I may have to start calling on people.
Anything.
Oh, take me to the next slide.
Sure. I wanted to
I'm
say.
not going to beg. Okay, what?
I wanted to say that
Yes.
uh, the meditation session, I really felt, oh, that was so long ago. uh, I felt how much of stress from body, like I could literally feel how much was being released through that session, and it was so long ago. So it was really so great to have that session back after a long time.
Oh, great, Jim. Well, that makes today's engagement a success in my mind. Look, we have Vicky.
Thank you. I also wanted to say the same, just as in California, historically with our droughts, we hold our breath every year for rain. Having you back here is like the experience of fresh rainfall. Um, and I kind of have a question. So one of the first things that my mom taught me when she started her spiritual journey was that the spirit is uh, unimaginably expansive in a way that the body can't really contain it, that it's so much bigger than what fits into our apparatus. Um, but it does the important job of illuminating. And as the knowers of the field, I want to know what is the appropriate awareness? Is it just awareness of our field, or how do we work with this awareness of how big the spirit is. And also on a practical level for myself, it's really difficult to cultivate nescience and uh, spiritual growth at the same time. I don't always feel great when I have to utilize the assets that my apparatus possesses for a material foundation and stability. And it's kind of hard to switch and quantify um, identity and who I am as spirit. I'm not sure if that was a very clear question.
Yeah, I got them both. There's nothing wrong with hard. It's okay. And there's a necessity to balance the two things. What's more, it's not detrimental. That's one of the very inspiring teachings of the ancient Vedas, is they say, live in the world. Don't try to retreat from the world. You can't do it. It's part of your nature. We have a dual existence going on here. We have our eyes and our ears and our minds. We're connected to this external energy. Ultimately, everything is from the same source. And anything that we call the material world can be transformed from matter, that sort of overwhelming energy that seems to oppress us, or it seems to be tyrannical in some ways when the senses and mind are uncontrolled. But Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, when you learn this discipline, then everything is in harmony. So how do we contain that sense, or what is our sense of proportion, or what is our sense of spiritual growth? The Bhagavad Gita explains that it comes through first an awakening of gratitude. It says now we're just exploring our own consciousness through this practice of mantra meditation. We're experiencing what it's like to look at ourselves and notice the difference between ourselves and our body, and even our minds and intelligence. And when we can find that, we can have a direct experience that I'm alive. Can you prove that you're alive? Oh, well, not scientifically. You just know you are. It's illuminating, it's light. You don't have to prove the sun came up. It just comes up and you're there. Now, what's the next stage beyond that? There's a sense, as I was mentioning in our meditation, that there's also a super spirit. That's where the real connection is. Because as you mentioned, the field, we have this boundary around us. We're slightly aware of what's going on in our own bodies and mind. I say slightly because really, if you notice, there's very little we know about how the body actually goes on. I mean, your heart's pumping right now, Vicky, but you're not aware of it. You're not even making it happen. Even your breath, it's not that you're breathing, you're being breathed. It's as if you're on a one of those machines they have in the ICU. What's that called?
Ventilator?
Yeah, like a ventilator. If you even try to stop breathing right now, you won't be able to. Your human body will go like, no, no, this is what I do. I breathe. So then once we're aware of the fact we're in a particular field, as you mentioned, we can become aware of the field. How does, what is that expansiveness that we feel? It's through what we call gratitude and appreciation. This is the awakening of bhakti. Bhakti means to then connect whatever's happening in the world to our source, because the world is actually amazing. In fact, I read a quote. I hope it's accurate, but it was from Einstein. He said, "You can see the world as an ordinary course of events, or you can see everything as a miracle." And the poet Blake had mentioned how you can, through observation and appreciation and gratitude, you could actually notice within a drop of water the entire cosmos. So there's this sense of when you look out and you see the rain, or you see the ocean, or you see the ability in another person, you can notice that all these things are coming from a source, and it's overwhelmingly amazing. And when we have that sense of awe and gratitude and appreciation, this is the next stage of consciousness opening, consciousness not being contracted and just resigned to the material body. But then it becomes more and more expansive. And what is it that's becoming more and more expansive? It's that emotion of gratitude. That's the beginning of our spiritual awakening, besides just noticing that we're not our body, but also noticing that we're grateful for our life and that everything around us is amazing. There's not one thing around us that isn't unique and amazing. So this becomes more and more expansive as bhakti grows, and it grows unlimitedly, just as if you shine a light upwards towards the sky, theoretically, it will expand unlimitedly like this. And our consciousness can expand like that unlimitedly through the process of appreciation and gratitude, otherwise known as bhakti. What great questions. So the other part about the difficulty of balancing life, that's important, because we have to notice the balance is going on because we're in a foreign environment. And if you notice that, and you also feel stability through your own meditations and feel a stability through appreciating the fact that you can't be affected by the outside world unless you let yourself be consumed by it. This is called material consciousness, which is a misnomer because our consciousness isn't material. It's actually otherworldly. But when we're carried away by the external feature of the world, then we suddenly feel, oh, it's out of control. It's not. And we're not part of it. And we can see that if you just take a little time before you embark in all of the activities that you must embark upon, and to maintain the status quo of your life, you can be aloof even as you're working. And that's one of the messages of the Bhagavad Gita is don't try to renounce the world. Try to see it in its proper perspective. And then there'll be a thrill at every moment. You'll never be bored. And there's no condition that will overwhelm you anymore when you have that sense of yourself and the super spirit, as I'm talking about, and how there's a universal intelligence that's controlling everything. This is reality. Okay, JM, Mayank put something up.
Yeah, mine had a reflection. Mine, do you want to maybe share it?
Sure. I was reflecting upon what Vash was mentioning before, that it is never discussed ever that we are not our bodies. So I was reflecting that what does get discussed a lot is the different statuses in life, like higher or lower. For example, my parents used to motivate me to study by telling me if I study well, if I study hard, I can go in a nice car to my office instead of going in a bicycle or a motorbike. So I should study hard. That was a reflection.
Well, that part came true. I think you do have a nice car. And Yeah. These are observable phenomena of this world. Whatever we invest ourselves in, it tends to grow in our lives. And this success sadhana idea is that make sure you invest in your real self and not just getting comfortable in the world, which is one of the points you're making. You know, there's so much emphasis on try to find a good situation, but that's not ever, there's never a satiation point in the material world where you say enough's enough. I'm completely satisfied. It has to come from within. And JM, we got in another one here.
Yeah, Krupa, please go ahead. I'd like to see your beaming smile.
No, I'm just being really happy in the just being here in your presence after so many days. I can't stop being happy. So really grateful for your being here for all of us. So
Well, kochira koso, as they say in Japan, right back at you. I feel the same way. Thank you. Thank you. And it's been too long. I agree. Okay, Jam, let's show a few more slides. There could be a few more thoughts here. Jam Nirali needs a link. So this next slide, obviously, because you can see it for yourself, says happy for no reason, a phrase I really like. It's a title of a book also. And this is our our real nature to be realized. And again, it's not hard. You don't have to be consumed by an anthill. You can do this from your bedroom if you take care to do it. It takes care. And so what does it feel like to be transiently situated, someone may ask. In fact, it's a question asked by the student in the Bhagavad Gita whose name is Arjuna. And the answer comes from Krishna, joyful. That's the first thing he says. You feel joy. Why? There's no reason. You just are joyful. And the next one is there's no lamentation or hankering. Lamentation means a feeling of guilt, if you've ever had that before. Oh, I didn't do enough. I'm not enough. I should have done this. I should have done that. Lamentation. And then hankering means if I just have one more upgrade in my external life, then I'll be happy. But whenever you get that upgrade, it becomes commonplace. It doesn't last. You just get used to it. And then you start thinking like, oh, I don't want to lose it now. That's the material nature. But all that disappears when one has a sense of being transcendentally situated. The next is something that's practically impossible and you won't find in this world. Satisfaction. You feel satisfied. This means enough. I have enough right now. Equipoise means whatever happens, up, down, good, bad, loss, gain, victory, defeat, I'm the same. Because I'm not attached to the results. Doesn't mean that you do a crummy job. It means you do your best, but you're not doing it for a particular result. And lastly, inclined to service. This is the awakening of bhakti. It means from our consciousness, when we think, how can I do something for my source? How can I do some service to give back? Because there's a sense of gratitude. Next slide. Liberation. Another way of talking about liberation, I like this idea. I mean, there's a way in which everyone's heard of karma, right? Say yes. Everyone's heard of karma. So karma means action, reaction. It means you buy stuff on a credit card and then you got to pay it back. That's what it means. And plus there's interest and penalties if you don't pay it back. So that's the whole material world. It's all based on tit for tat. You take something, you got to pay for it. And so there's a way in which when you opt out and you don't own anything anymore, which even financially is is a viable strategy. People who know finance, it's like, what do you own? Nothing. It's all in a trust. The trust owns it. I don't own it. I'm just there. So in a similar way, the sages say, don't own anything in this world. Yes, keep things, use them, but use them for a higher reason than I just accumulate. And I feel that I'm making progress because I've accumulated. No, that's not progress. You got to pay for that. And that means you got to work hard. So when you realize that you don't actually own anything, you don't get to keep anything, and you also have this sense of growing gratitude, I'm going to use everything in service, then you don't have any more debt. Your debt is gone. So if you've ever been in a situation where you're a debtor, anybody ever have a student loan or credit card debt or mortgage on your house that you paid off, and then suddenly it's like, oh, I'm debt free. Oh, yay. I can go to the ocean now, or whatever it may be. Karma is a huge debt, and it comes because of my idea of consuming the world as mine. And so part of the liberated experience is, because I'm not really part of this world, I don't have to claim ownership over anything. But it doesn't mean to drop it. It means to use it for a higher purpose. That's the key. How to use everything in service. Jim, let's show a couple more slides because I'm really running out the clock today fast. Oh, Rashmi's got something up there. We got to hear what Rashmi had to say. I am happy and joyful for the reason to be in this virtual room with you. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. The session is so rejuvenating. When in meditation, I had goosebumps listening to your voice in tune with the background music. I observed differentiating body parts is very natural, but distinguishing between mind, intelligence, and consciousness is very tricky. It was a great meditation. Thank you. I'm very grateful. Thanks, Rashmi. Let me just say something about the next level of distinguishing. This is where all the gains are. When you start to be able to distinguish between yourself and your mind, because here's what happens. We get controlled by our mind. In fact, I'm just having a reading, and I have it open to this one section. It's a conversation between this enlightened being named Judd Bharat and King Rahugana. This is a long story, so I won't give everything, but Judd Bharat had been through a few lifetimes, and he came to a perfect state of self-realization. So he was living it, and he really had no engagement at the point of this conversation, but the king was coming along on his palanquin, and he thought, I'm the king, I'm the king. And one of the palanquin carriers had become injured, so he asked his members of his retinue to recruit somebody else, tell them they got to carry my thing. So they saw this Judd Bharat, who had a very strong body, and they said, hey, you get over here, carry the king's palanquin. So as he was carrying the king's palanquin, he was also a self-realized being, so he didn't want to hurt any other living entity. So he saw ants on the ground, and he was trying to avoid them. In the meantime, it was jostling the palanquin. The king said, hey, what's wrong with you? Can't you carry that? And he berated this self-realized person who up to that point was completely silent because he didn't want to be involved in politics or any kind of argument. But then when he began to speak, the king realized that, oh, this person's self-realized. So then the king got off his palanquin, he offered his respect and said, please enlighten me. So this is part of this conversation. It's one of the instructions that Judd Bharat gave, and it kind of fits in here. So I'm just going to insert it in the 3 minutes we have left. It says, this uncontrolled mind is the greatest enemy of the living entity. If one neglects it or gives it a chance, it will grow more and more powerful and will become victorious. Although it is not factual, it is very strong. It covers the constitutional position of the soul. O king, please try to conquer this mind by the weapon of service to the spiritual master and the supreme personality of Godhead. Do this with great care. So we get this idea from the Bhagavad Gita and the Srimad Bhagavatam. This is the next level, is start to learn how to bring the mind into control. Let's just, so one or two more quick slides because it relates to this. I want to leave with some practical instruction about the mind. I may move it along fast. Discover your true nature. That's pretty much what we've been talking about. Keep going. You versus your life situation. I think we covered that a little bit. There's a difference between you and your life situation. No ties in the material world. I already said that. Then going within. This is more detailed, so I'm going to skip it. There's something more practical coming up. There's the elements of the material world. And then there's us. Then calm the volatile mind. This is worth, I'll read this. A person who is not disturbed by the incessant flow of desires that enter like rivers into the ocean, which is ever being filled, but is always still, can alone achieve peace, and not the person who strives to satisfy such desires. Helpful. Keep going. Okay, mind disruptors, reward-seeking work. And that sounds, oh, of course I want a reward from it. Well, there's a different kind of work. You're doing your work, and yes, you got to live, and yes, you got to take your paycheck. But if you get a different mindset and you're doing service, your work for service, and doing as much selfless service as possible, you'll be able to reverse this disruptor of the mind. Other thing is unregulated senses. Yoga means control the senses by regulating them. Don't just let them do whatever they want. Otherwise, they'll get used to it. And if you've ever seen a pet who's never been asked to conform to the ways of the household, you'll notice that it becomes like a wild beast. Children can be like that too. If they're not brought up properly, they can become selfish. No spiritual goals or practice is a mind disruptor. So have that. And material sound vibration, big topic, which we've talked about a lot. That's a disruptor. Go to the next one, please. Mind calming factors, anonymous service. Try that. Just see what it does for your mind. It's amazing. Do some anonymous service. Regulate your senses, like figure out how to get the right amount of sleep and go to bed early-ish, get up a little early-ish before the sun. That's a practice. There are many, many other practices that are very commonsensical. It's not even in the yoga world. Even now you'll hear it everywhere on YouTube that like, yeah, get yourself together. Don't just splay out and do whatever you want. Spiritual practice with goals and purify the sound vibration. These things have a direct and immediate effect on our minds. And if we learn what they are and we learn how to control the mind, I know there's more, Jam, but I'm going to stop there because I ran out the clock. There's so much more to say, but I think the best part for me today was just meditating together and then having some discussion and very deliberately coming here. And this is what spiritual practice means. Do this every day, be consistent, and you'll notice the improvement. Nothing succeeds like success. When you start feeling that you're becoming more self-determining, you're able to overcome the mind through regulation, and your mind starts to become your friend, which is a very advanced stage of yoga, but it's achievable within a short-ish amount of time. If you're serious, then your life improves. And that's success sadhana. Thanks, Jam, for keeping the lights on. Thanks, everybody. I'm seeing so many devotees that I've been missing every single day, and some who I saw in India. Thanks for stopping in to our little retreat. And can't wait to see you more. JM, while I was on my retreat, I met someone who literally had come from the Himalaya. And it was a funny situation because they had gone there to find a pristine environment, which they did, clean water, nice air, unlike Delhi. I wasn't in Delhi, but it was close enough. And after 2 days, they said they started getting bored, so they came down and joined our retreat. But before he had to leave, I debriefed him and I said, hey, what about those yogis high in the Himalayas? And he said, what about them? I said, do they do this thing when they see each other? They say, and he interrupted me. He said, you mean put your hands up in the air and say Hari Bol? I said, yeah. And he goes, absolutely. So maybe we could try it before we go. A way they say, the yogis say goodbye to each other and hello. It's kind of like aloha. You put your hands up like this and you say Hari Bol.
Haribol!
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 Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Hari
Haribol!
Bol. See you soon. Nigama, go with him.
Haribol!